Okay, I'd like to call to order a special meeting of the Frankfurt Plant Board using video teleconference on, this is February, is it Kathy, February 6th?
7th.
February 7th at 5:30, and we're doing this via Zoom. And we only have one topic on the agenda tonight. We've got an opportunity. I think you all have seen the materials. We got an opportunity to apply for a USDA grant for 9010 federal funding to complete the array at the solar array at the plant board. And Jason's been doing a ton of work to put this together along with Travis and Hans. And basically, we've got several items here, but they're all related to this project. And what we're basically doing is given the go ahead to go on and submit the grant application, get the cost estimates, submit everything, and then the deadline is March 31st. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done. So this would give the go ahead to proceed with the project. It may be sometime this summer before we actually hear, but it is an opportunity to get some 9010 federal funding, which would be great. So Jason, I'll turn it over to you and take it from here.
Okay. Well, thanks, guys, for considering this. This is actually what I do for my day job. I've been writing these grants for about 9 years. I've written about 400 of them, about 14 million awarded to clients around. And in the last 2 years, it's changed dramatically. The Infrastructure Act put $1 billion into a $50 million program. So they went from about $1 million in Kentucky a year to roughly $30 million to allocate over a year and a half. So we're in the middle of all that right now. And in order to help move the money, they moved from a 25% grant to a 50% grant, and they moved from $500,000 cap to $1 million cap. So we would be able to put in a $2 million project and hopefully get a $1 million grant. What's nice about this is it stacks with the tax credit reimbursements, and I think we're somewhere around, we're at least 30, but maybe even as high as 40. So between this grant, if we can get it at 50%, and then the tax credit at 30 or 40, we're at 80 or 90% of the whole system paid for with incentives. What I like about that so much is we've been going around and around and around for years with Travis and his magical Excel sheet, just trying to figure out how the community solar affects the ratepayer payments. And we are always kind of coming slightly in above our current rate. But with the system almost being free, it would, I think, dramatically reduce that. So if we were to work with the city to give them the green power, or work with them to have them take the green power, or we were to work with a municipal rate where we could blend this in so that the city would have a diversified rate. But the details are left to be discussed and looked at with the tariff. I'm just really focused on the grant. I think if we can get this thing, it puts us in a really great position to show the city we are trying to meet their needs. And I've talked to Gary and we've talked to Travis. What this basically it would do is phase 2, 3, 4, and then a 5th phase, basically building our solar array out to, I'm estimating about 1.5 megawatts back there, where initially we're shooting for around 700. Travis might tell me it's different. These numbers blend together on me, but I think about twice as much as we were originally thinking we could put back there. And we've looked at the different areas that could kind of move in and go around. But what's nice is we would end up with a very large array. Now, looking at the NREL reports and talking about what the city needs, John, correct me on this, I think they need about 6.5 megawatts, 7 megawatts for most of the city operations. So we would be able, if we did change the tariff, or we did work with the city, or we did work with Miss White, to maybe help them move the city hall and the police department pretty much all green, which would be great. It would be very much in line with the city commission's been asking us for, and it would show that we're a partner in this whole process with them.
So we basically, like I said, this is authorization to submit the grant and to apply for it. And if you notice there on the agenda, there's the 1.1 is considered the issuance of the RFP, which is basically authorizing us to submit it and see if we can qualify for the funding. Then there's an environmental assessment that needs to be done as far as the grant process. There's a grant writing contract. Jason's been very upfront. He's worked with Hans, done all the proper stuff in terms of disclosures and so forth. Then there's also a feasibility review and archaeological study that has to be done as part of the grant process. So Jason has worked hard with Travis and Hans and Gary to identify some vendors who could do this in short turnaround, who do this type of work. Jason's provided Hans all the documentation of these people's qualifications, what they do, why they're available. The contracts are relatively low amounts for the project. Several of them are just a couple $1,000s, which I don't mean just a couple, but they're very reasonable, low cost contracts. So what we've got is we've got the motions in front of us. And what I'd like to do is, of course, one, if Jason can answer any questions, or Travis, to do it, like I said, if we however we dispatch this power would definitely be under the KYMEA limits, and it would basically be very low cost power and be available for no matter where we go with it, it's going to be a good value for us. So one, if anybody's got any questions to Jason, so please feel free to ask them now. John?
Yeah, Jason, this is an exciting opportunity. I'm really glad you've worked your butt off on it. I really appreciate it. I do have one question though. The two grants are going to stack on top of one another. Both of those grants, those percentages are off the total cost, right? The 50% doesn't come in, and then the 40% isn't off the remainder. It's off the full cost of the grant, correct? And they are stackable.
That is correct, but just so we are all using the same language, one of them would be the USDA REAP grant. That's the 50%.
And the other is a tax credit, right?
And then one's a tax credit that becomes a grant for nonprofits. And then one thing that Hans is telling me, and we've looked into with David, is normally the USDA grant is a taxable source of income, but because we're a nonprofit, it sounds like we're just not going to so we'll get the full 50%, which is nice. That's a bit of a different game. But what we don't get is the accelerated depreciation, which for-profits get. So it's kind of a wash in the end.
Right. But we're saving so much money to begin with. The accelerated depreciation is not really as much of a concern.
That's it. And then just to echo what John was saying, I do want to be clear that, I am only going to be acting as a board member. That's the only role I'm playing in this. Andy McDonald actually writes these grants as well, smaller versions of them, but I can guide him and advise him on how to write the bigger ones just to make sure it's complete. I can help him review it, but I am simply going to work as a board member in this. I have no financial or fiduciary interests in this at all. I'm just really trying to bring together resources to help the plant board achieve this goal. So I've worked real hard with Hans and John, and just to make sure that's 100% clear, because I'm always very, very clear on this stuff.
Yeah, Jason has checked every block on this and to make sure it's done properly, and Hans has all the documentation in the file on how we got to this point. And I think you all have seen all the documents we've been sending out, for the last several days, so everybody could review them ahead of time. So Jason really has done a yeoman's job on this, and like I said, Travis and Hans and David didn't have put in a lot of work to it, Gary. So,
yeah, and I do want to say one thing. I found out that municipal utilities were eligible for this about 2 months ago, and I've been doing this for 9 years, and you could have pushed me over with a piece of straw. I thought it was so I was like, that's not true. Like, I'm sorry someone told you that. It's not true. And so I went to the USDA in Kentucky. They ran it up to DC. We have emails, we have everything confirming we are, as an entity with an appointed commission, eligible for this. Cooperative utilities are eligible for this about 3 or 4 years ago, but this is the first time I'd ever heard of a municipal utility being eligible. But there's a caveat. It has to be an appointed board, unlike DMU, that's the city commission also serves as the board. So this is a case where us and a few other munis in the state have an opportunity because of our very appointed nature, which I'd like to underline is an advantage for the community. So once again, I was shocked. I heard about this coming in December, and I was like, there's no way. And then we have it in triplicate from the USDA. So unless something changes, we're going to put best foot in front of ourselves. But like I said, I've just never seen a muni do this before, which we could be one of the first in the country to actually use this grant in this way, which is exciting as well.
And I want to point out, I think Catherine's got a question. I want to point out that, if you remember, in a prior board meeting, we authorized Jason to explore the eligibility and then bring it back to the board. So this is a result of what the board previously authorized Jason to explore on our behalf. Catherine?
I don't have a question, but I just wanted to chime in and thank Jason for all his hard work. Obviously, you bring a great expertise to the board, and which is why it's no doubt one of the reasons you're on the board. And I just really appreciate how you've kept us up on everything, every step of the way. So I really appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you.
So if there's no further questions, the first item is item 1.1, consider issuance of RFP 2024-1. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Approved. Next item, 1.2, consider award of an environmental assessment of the administrative property to Shield Environmental Associates in an amount of $5,000. This is a personal service contract and it falls within our purchasing authority. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion's approved. Item 1.3, consider award of a grant writing contract. And as you all have seen, it's a very low amount and we only pay the remainder if in fact the grant's successful. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
So moved.
We have a motion and second. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed? Approved. Item 1.4, review and consider approval of REAP feasibility review from More Ventures LLC. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right.
Those opposed? Motion's approved. Next, consider archaeological study of administrative properties to support REAP grant. Do we have a motion?
Sorry, John, can I make a comment about just this one so it makes more sense?
Sure.
Okay. I had put that there was a range on the front end a little bit, and this is
Right.
the range is I spoke with the director of archaeology for a firm that Shield recommended out of Lexington that does this a lot. This is one of those things where we're not going to be sure if we have to pull the trigger on the archaeological until we actually get through the environmental review with Shield. It may even be a situation where we submit the application and the USDA comes back in April and goes, hey, by the way, go ahead and knock out the archaeological, do the tribal letters. We won't know until we really get into this because there's some caveats. I want to go back and work with Hans and maybe Kathy and look at some of the original pictures of the construction of the plant board building. And if that site where we're looking was disturbed, if the earth moved, if we had been piling stuff over there, we might be able to use those pictures to get it clarified as a disturbed soil. And if we can get that wipes out the need for your archaeological. So we'll be working on that in parallel to save that cost and also the time involved in that. But I just wanted to let you guys know that that's maybe a vote coming up. But I don't know, John, if you want to vote on it in principle or
Well,
what you'd like.
I think we go on I'm thinking, subject to what the board, we go on authorize it and it's contingent. If it's needed, it's approved and you can proceed without delay. If we don't need it, we never issue the contract.
I appreciate that. Yeah.
So basically 1.5 would be consider archaeological study of the administrative properties to support the REAP grant if necessary.
Right. That's cool.
Yeah.
Okay. Do we have
Mr. Chairman, I'll make that motion, but I also want to say if we find any gold, we take it with the surplus property and we use it to do whatever you want to do. Okay.
Are we going to pay off the plant board jet?
We've already done that, haven't we?
We've already paid off the jet.
But I will make that motion. I will make that motion.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed? We have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion second. All those in favor of adjournment?
Aye.
Aye. Those who want to stay longer? We're adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you, everybody.